Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Happy Wednesday, y'all. I hope everyone is staying safe, grounded, and healthy out there. I am back yet again because I cannot let this new release about this Sheath slide. It needs to be talked about, it needs to be questioned, it needs to be broken all the way down. They give us this sheath, this piece of evidence, like it's airtight, it seals the case, while ignoring everything else that does not add up. No, not over here. So tonight we're taking a closer look at this so-called touch DNA and the chain of custody that mysteriously vanished. Buckle up, because if they thought that the public was going to forget, they clearly don't know who they're dealing with. This is Criminally Human, and we are not yet done. The state would like for all of us to believe that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on the snap button of the sheath that was recovered at 1122 King Road. That small piece of evidence is now being paraded around like it's the smoking gun. This was supposed to be their nail in the coffin. But let's talk about touch DNA because they're making it sound like it's bulletproof, but here's the actual truth. Touch DNA refers to microscopic skin cells, usually just a few. It's not blood, it's not hair, it's not saliva, it's not body fluid. It is trace amounts of dead skin, sweat, or natural oils. It's the kind of residue that we all actually leave behind by simply existing. But let's slow it down and look at the science. Touch DNA, the kind allegedly found here, it's not bulletproof. It's fragile, it's easily compromised. It does not survive just anything. It breaks down in heat and it smears in movement. So, if I can give you guys a couple of examples, shaking hands would cause secondary transfer. If person A shakes hands with person B and then person B touches a knife sheath, person A's DNA can now show up on the sheath even if they never touched it directly. If you're a passenger in someone's car and you touch the door, the seatbelt, or the window, God forbid something happens in that car, there was a crime committed. Days later, your DNA is still on those surfaces, even if you haven't been in the car since. But that does not mean that you committed any crime there. Someone borrowing gloves, a hoodie, or even using the same tools, your DNA can transfer to something that you never even saw because the item was touched after touching you. Then you have cross contamination in a lab. If two items are tested near each other and it was not sterilized strictly, let's say they didn't follow protocols the way that they should, one person's DNA can then end up on both. If you were to touch a doorknob and 10 people come after you and touch that same knob, forensics can still lift your DNA later, but that does not mean that you were the last person there to touch that doorknob or that you committed that crime. If an officer touches your ID or your wallet and then collects evidence without changing their gloves, guess what? Your DNA can end up in places that you've never even been at. You have saliva particles and airborne transfer. So, yes, even from speaking or coughing, those microscopic cells can land on surfaces, especially in close or chaotic scenes where we look at 1122 King Road. It doesn't mean that the person physically interacted with that object. Sometimes you can grab something firmly and leave no DNA, and other times just brushing past something can leave enough for a profile. And that is how random and unstable that touch DNA really truly is. Touch DNA doesn't prove who used something, only that someone's skin cells ended up there. And that could have happened 100 different ways, especially in a crime scene full of chaos, blood, movement, and dozens of investigators touching everything. But here's what they're not telling you about touch DNA: it's fragile, it does not hold well under pressure or contamination. So, when we're talking about microscopic particles of dead skin, sweat, or oil, that kind can be rubbed away with actual movement. It can be washed off by moisture. It can be destroyed by heat or completely drowned out by blood, bodily fluids, or actual human contact. And this wasn't a quiet scene. This was a bloody, high adrenaline, chaotic attack. A man allegedly fighting, stabbing multiple people. This person is probably sweating, moving very fast. Was this person bleeding? Because usually in an attack so vicious, especially with people fighting back like the prosecution wanted us to believe, did he have any injuries too? But yet somehow we're supposed to believe that a single clean skin cell managed to hold on tight through blood splatter, motion, gravity, and heat, and it settled so nicely on the snap of the sheath. No smears, no fingerprints, no blood, just one invisible clue that magically survived it all, but left no other traces on it. No prints on the underside, no smudges along the length of the sheath, no friction marks, no blood transfer. So let me plainly ask, who holds a knife sheath by the button snap? That's like a woman picking up her purse by a zipper instead of the strap or the handles. That's not logical. So, nah, y'all gonna have to try again. Now, here's where it gets a little murkier. So, let's pretend, just for argument's sake, that the DNA was real, that the DNA was not transferred, that it was not contaminated, that it was not planted. Let's go deeper into forensic procedure. Who collected the sheath when they collected it and how they handled it? If we look at that and we ask those questions, that's where things go quiet. There's no transparency, there's no breakdown of collection, there is no public confirmation of the timeline. They just don't have anything to say about that. So let's now go through the missing pieces. Was the sheath photographed in its original position before being moved? Was it logged next to the blood or in a dry, conveniently untouched area? Was it bagged and tagged immediately? Were proper gloves used, tweezers, sterile packaging, or did it pass through unofficial hands before ever reaching the lab? And the answer to those questions are we don't know, because no official chain of custody has ever been publicly released. And in a case where the entire prosecution rests on one single piece of physical evidence, that should actually disturb everyone. And let me go ahead and repeat that louder for the folks in the back. The one item tying Bryan Kohberger to this crime was a sheath with no blood, and it has no verified, transparent chain of custody. So, meanwhile, the trial documents are sealed. The house was bulldozed. The crime scene photos are restricted and body cam footage is chopped up or withheld. Everything has been redacted or we just don't get to see it. But let's be real. Touch DNA is not the same as blood evidence. Touch DNA is not the same as a hair follicle. Touch DNA is not a full fingerprint. It's not even a partial print. Touch DNA can be transferred passively. Someone touches the sheath after shaking Kohberger's hand, for example. It could be secondhand through a glove, a surface, or even a shared object. It could have been contaminated in a lab. And yes, that happens. And I will continue saying that evidence is planted all the time. So the sheath was reportedly found in the same bed as a victim. I need y'all to really stay with me with that. They want us to believe that this sheath was found in the same bed as a victim, and these people were violently attacked. But there was no visible blood, no saturation, no transfer stains, and no apparent evidence that it had ever even been in that room during a bloodbath. And I'm not saying that to be insensitive. If it was this bloody massacre, like they said, how is there no evidence of that? How? How does a man allegedly commit a close contact murder spree and leave behind the cleanest item in the house? It's giving this shit was a prop. It's giving they placed it. And it's giving this will do for all the dumbasses. So now they can say, see, I told you there's real evidence and we all knew Bryan was guilty. And all of you people doubting him, you're cast out to hell with the rest of the demons. Yeah, we're just going to give them this bullshit and they're going to go ahead and they're going to buy that. Right. So let's talk about what we should have seen. We have footage from the night of the murders, body cams that were showing police outside, across the street. We have them conducting interviews with neighbors. So tell me, why don't we have footage of the sheath being discovered? Why don't we see the sheath being photographed in place where they found it, supposedly? Why haven't we seen how it was packaged or documented? And why is everything surrounding the sheath so cloudy and such secretive? Everything has been redacted and they are not being transparent. My thing is it sloppy, or did it never happen the way that they said it did? I'm saying we have not been shown enough to say that this was not planted. And when a crime scene is demolished before the defense team can even perform a second forensic sweep, that's not just suspicious. That is actually intentional. So here's where I'm at with this. What if should not be a conviction. The state wants you to rely on maybes. Maybe, what if he touched the sheath? What if he dropped it during the killings? What if that one speck of DNA really means guilt? But what if is not evidence? What if, to me, is not beyond a reasonable doubt? And honestly, if I was on that jury, they would have hated me as being one of those jurors because I'm not convinced. And what if is not enough to take a man's life away, especially when there's no motive, no blood, no surveillance, and no confession or even witnesses. So, for all of the people that are saying he confessed, he did it, Bryan Kohberger never confessed to shit. And I see why, because this evidence is not giving what they said it was supposed to. They are spinning a narrative around a single cell. And if that sheath had blood on it, we would have saw the photos. Your Honor, I'd like to bring your attention to exhibit so and so. If we had fingerprints, it would have been all over the court records. Your Honor, I like to now bring your attention to this where we match these fingerprints and this is this and he did it because these are his fingerprints. If the crime scene matched the story, that house would still be standing, but it did not. So they tore it down. So we're left with a button snap, a single cell, and a story that does not stick or make a lick of sense. The sheath stayed clean because the story was already dirty. And if they could wipe away 4 lives without leaving a trace, just imagine what else they've made disappear. You guys and girls, go ahead and take it to the comment section and tell me how you feel. Why is there no blood on this sheath when they told us it was found in a bed next to a bloody victim that was brutally stabbed? Why hasn't anyone addressed the chain of custody? Because silence is not justice, and I'm not staying quiet. And I also had an idea. The anniversary of this tragedy is approaching, and I want to do something different. I want y'all to email me voice clips at criminallyhuman@gmail.com sharing your perspective on this case, whether you believe in Brian's guilt, his innocence, or just have questions. I want to not only do a tribute to the victims, but I also want to know how everyone else feels as well. Um, Never give up my sources ever. So if you don't want to be mentioned and you choose a voice clip, just don't put your name in the voice clip. Nobody will know that it was you. But I'm curious to know how everyone else feels, because the thing about it is, those victims don't have voices, but your voices can matter in this situation. And let's make sure that theirs weren't the only ones who have been silenced. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing rest of your night. And your girl is out.